everybody, and welcome to our presentation for MBA 617, Organizational Theory for Managers. We are Group 4, and we will be presenting on knowledge management. So some of the key things that you want to take away from this presentation is what knowledge management is, the 4 goals and how do you achieve them, the difference between explicit and tacit, the knowledge management process cycle, strategies and organizational challenges associated with knowledge management, and the most engaging way to get in touch with knowledge management. So what is knowledge management? Knowledge management views information as a primary asset for organizations and is critical to all business functions from daily operations to future planning and growth. Efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation are all supported by having high-quality, accessible information flow within an organization. Knowledge management provides tools and processes for organizations to identify, organize, communicate, and effectively utilize knowledge that is both internal and external to the organization. KM as a discipline has been evolving through the technological boom of the late 1990s, when computer technologies offered new ways to access and communicate information. The tremendous increase in volume of information available to organizations and new ways of thinking about information, other than just factual data, precipitated the demand for products, tools, theoretical frameworks, and tested strategies to facilitate control over knowledge. Knowledge management began as a way for organizations to systemize collection, dissemination, and use of explicit knowledge resources. More recently, expansion of internet capabilities and digital and wireless connectivity have stimulated a co-evolution of IT communication tools that can facilitate access to tacit knowledge resources. IT applications support 4 primary goals DAFT identified for implementing knowledge management processes. These include finding knowledge, organizing knowledge, making knowledge available and usable, and fostering a knowledge-sharing culture. Finding knowledge. Application of IT to support these goals differs whether the knowledge is explicit or tacit in nature. Explicit knowledge is easily collected and stored by a variety of database and indexing systems, ranging from simple spreadsheets to complex multi-layered shared repositories. Organizing knowledge. Organizing such data is accomplished through indexing systems, and accessibility is enhanced through searchable database functions and electronic document transfer. The ability to store documents digitally and anticipate multi-user, multi-portal access creates an ability for organizations to efficiently share data and knowledge, and move towards an expectation of knowledge transparency within the organization. Making knowledge available and usable. This can be done through document sharing, accessible databases, networking and shared drives, video conferencing such as Skype, cloud computing, or employing a dashboard. Fostering an information sharing culture. Knowledge can be captured and shared through platforms such as message boards, surveys, and blogs and group emails. Knowledge can be organized by topic and message boards that can be broadly accessed and archived. Software for concept mapping and creative work can help codify individual ideas for use by groups. Instant messaging, digital technologies such as cell phones and video conferencing are connecting workplace communities at an astonishing rate. Today's managers also benefit from the societal trend toward information sharing that is normalizing the transparency required to promote a knowledge-sharing culture within an organization. Explicit or tacit. In his discussion on knowledge management, DAFT identified explicit and tacit knowledge as different types of information assets, each with unique qualities requiring different KM strategies. Traditionally, compartmentalized knowledge was either explicit or tacit. This is the most broadly known approach and understood to be the foundation of knowledge management. It supports the creation of successful tools and strategies to share specific information types, and is conceptually simple for organizations to implement. In this approach, the organization is broken down into segments, and knowledge is managed within those segments. It does not take into account the potential benefit of the holistic approach, which is more concerned with the whole corporate system rather than the individual units. Explicit knowledge is information that is outwardly stored, codified, and can be articulated. It is the know-what factual information accessed through databases, books, internet pages, and other repositories. It is physically available and often housed within organizations and is communicated through person-to-document exchanges, such as manuals, technical training, formal education, or self-directed learning. It requires strategies for collection and curation that can sort and store volumes of data and information in ways that make them the most useful and available. Managing explicit knowledge requires a heavy investment in IT tools and processes. Tacit knowledge is less tangible. Tacit knowledge originates within the individual and grows from personal experiences. It is often difficult to communicate and formalize. It is often recognized as common sense, intuition, and having good judgment. It's the know-how information often not consciously thought about, but just is instinctual and is communicated through person-to-person exchanges such as mentoring and personal conversations. It requires developing communication strategies to pass the knowledge, or else it will remain within the individual. Mentoring retreats and establishing a culture of communication take an investment of time, but are needed to foster exchange of tacit knowledge. In 2008, Froppolo postulated that organizations should be concerned with a third type of information, implicit knowledge, which is tacit-like information which can be captured and codified. It is detailed behind the baker's feel of a ready bread dough or the subtleties by which a coffee connoisseur defines a quality bean. Smith, in 2012, suggested organizations consider a system-based approach to knowledge management. He adds to this idea by suggesting organizational knowledge can be defined as a system in which information is dynamic and can be translated and transformed, internalized and externalized, and moved between tacit, implicit, and explicit qualities. This ecological perspective toward knowledge resource demonstrates utility beyond, which is reflected in the limited explicit tacit compartmentalization. The knowledge management process cycle. The knowledge management process cycle begins with the creation or acquisition of knowledge. Socialization describes identifying and sharing knowledge assets via person-to-person interactions such as mentoring relationships, brainstorming sessions, etc. Externalization is a process used to convert tacit knowledge to explicit knowledge in order to facilitate sharing. Internalization is a process of converting explicit knowledge into tacit knowledge, and combination describes combining two or more sources of explicit knowledge to create a new explicit knowledge. Acquisition. Knowledge acquisition is different from knowledge creation, as it refers to gathering and storing existing knowledge. This is done through new knowledge outside of the organization that, once acquired, will add value to a business. Sourcing refers to sifting through the results to identify and collect that specific information that will add value. Grafting is the process of acquiring this new tacit knowledge. It occurs by hiring a person who has experience or expertise in an area where the organization wishes to expand its knowledge. Refinement. Knowledge refinement is used to identify essential knowledge assets to be formatted, stored, and ultimately utilized. It is at this stage that most tacit knowledge is converted to explicit knowledge. The next step is to include refinement knowledge in the organization's memory. Organizational memory includes knowledge stored in the minds of organizational participants that held in electronic repositories, that which have been acquired and retained by groups or teams, and that which have been embedded in businesses, processes, products, or service in its relationship with customers, partners, and suppliers. Transfer. Knowledge is either transferred or shared. Transferring knowledge is defined as the focused and purposeful communication of knowledge from a sender to a known receiver. Shared knowledge is disseminated broadly through a variety of means, including databases and other repositories. Once knowledge has been transferred or shared, it is utilized by the recipient, which leads to improved organizational performance. Here, improvements or adjustments are made to the KM system, and the cycle begins anew once more. Strategies and organizational challenges. To provide the class with an example of KM strategies in use, we will focus on its application in the healthcare sector. Healthcare is a dynamic and complex field which requires a vast amount of knowledge. Healthcare providers must have access to current and relevant information to guide them when providing patient care. We will examine two cases and discuss the factors and end results of those cases. The first study was published in the Harvard Business Review. Management at Partners decided that a KM program would be beneficial to the company by giving physicians better access to information that would guide their diagnosis and treatment plans, with an overarching goal of reducing medical errors. Partners designed a custom order entry system that was embedded in the workplace. This system would run orders, such as prescriptions and lab tests, entered by a physician through a database and provide the physician with any additional information. It would also let the physician know if there was more cost-effective options. Although this new system was expensive and time-consuming, it was considered successful. The increased access to information reduced serious medical errors by 55%. Fewer errors also translated into approximately $1 million per year in cost savings. The KAM strategy aligned with company goals. It improved the quality of health care that was being provided, and due to the embedded nature of the system, physicians were required to use the program every day. It was not an extra step. The strategy used the correct blend of information, technology, and personal knowledge. The system was designed to present the physician with an instant and pertinent information, while allowing them to make decisions. Including that the end user was included in the development stage was critical to the successfulness of this design. The Emmanuel Medical Care Center. This article was published by the Association for Information Management. They developed the KAM initiative to address the issue of knowledge being lost due to employee turnover. The project had goals of reducing training gaps and duplicate tasks, as well as fostering interdepartmental communication. They developed the intranet that physicians and clinicians could use to store previously written medical practices. There was a discussion board to increase communication, and the KAM system was designed by a task force, but did not include the clinical staff that would actually be using the system. As a result, the program was considered successful during a trial period. However, data collected after the program had been in place for a year showed that less than 1% of the staff had even logged on to the program. Also, employees who used the system for training purposes were 23% more likely to fail a procedural exam when compared to an employee who completed the traditional in-person training. There are several reasons that this failed. The first is that the KAM strategy that was chosen did not align with operational activities of the clinical staff. It created additional tasks and required more effort. Another reason is that the technology was not used appropriately. It was separate from systems that the clinical staff already use and was inconvenient to access. The KAM system that was embedded in the existing program would have been much more effective. Interviews showed that some of the clinical staff believed it was a tool meant only for admin. The final reason for failure is knowledge is power attitude that many of the physicians expressed in their interviews. The organizational culture and employee appraisal system was biased to reward individual efforts instead of teamwork. This resulted in many physicians being reluctant to share their information with others. Takeaway for managers. After examining these contrasting case studies, we compiled a list of key points for managers who are developing a KAM initiative. The first is to ensure that the KAM strategy aligns with the organizational goals. It is important to include the end user in the development of the KAM strategy. This ensures that the strategy is carried out in a way that is beneficial and usable by those employees. It should be integrated into the existing system so that employees are not burdened with additional work. It is important to communicate clearly with employees regarding this KAM strategy. If they understand the value behind the initiative, they will be more likely to be receptive and positive to any necessary changes that will need to take place. So let's get engaged. Here are the links for the fun activities that we have designed for you to get engaged with KAM management. And they will also be posted underneath our posts on the final work board, so look for them there. Lastly, here's our cited sources. Thank you for joining us on our presentation of knowledge management.